Okay, so for this brake job, you're going to need a couple of items. You're going to need a socket set. In this case, to open up the calipers, it's going to be a 14 millimeter head right here. You're going to need something to push back the piston on the rears. On this Honda CRV, there's no special cross pattern, so you can use a good old-fashioned one of those. Some brake cleaner in case you want to clean off some of your old parts, a wire brush, some silicone anti-seize right here, and of course you're going to need a set of rear brakes. Real big thing about the Honda CRV is that there's a couple versions of this back brake, so make sure you get together with your dealer. In this case, I'm going to list the model number down here so you can pick it up. I've had success with both Honda parts and AutoZone local parts store parts, so I use a ceramic rear brake. But our first step is removing the tire. The jack point of this Honda CRV on the rear is going to be right in the center right here, and of course we're going to put jack stands at the jack points, and I'll show you the point right here where we place the jack stands as well. So we're going to go ahead and remove the calipers next. Okay, so whenever we're going to remove these two caliper pins right here, one is listed on top right here, this is listed on the bottom. We're going to go and remove these. And this is a 12 millimeter bolt. Loosen this one right here. We're going to loosen this one right here. You got a couple options if you want to swing this out and do a real quick brake job. You can take one pin out and then swing this up so that this remains on one of the bolts. I prefer to take both of them out. As you notice, both of these bolts, we're going to put anti-seize on this here in a second. So as you kind of pull this out, the thing that you got to be careful about is when you wiggle this, you're going to have one of the brake pads feel as if it's getting stuck, because on this design car, this brake pad right here has these connectors that will go inside the piston inside here. So we'll kind of slowly remove these, and if you need, what you may need is a screwdriver to push this out, but in my case I was able to push it down, and I recommend putting a bungee cord and hanging it from here. In this case, I've got a bucket that I'm going to lay this out at, and we're going to go ahead and pull both of the brake pads out next, and you'll see I'll show a comparison with the brake pads. And then from this other brake pad, we're just going to pull out this brake pad, and I'll show you what it looks like here. And there's actually a wear indicator on here that will rub against the caliper, actually rub against the rotor, and I'll show you this pad is pretty much worn, and I'll show you a comparison of these pads here shortly against the new one. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and reuse some of these parts. I'm going to pull the hardware down from right here. We're just going to take the wire brush and clean off a couple of the parts right here, and we're going to get that clean. I'm going to clean that here off camera. We're going to pull this top part. We're going to pull from the top off, and we're going to clean both sides here shortly. And then I also recommend cleaning some of the brake dust off from here as well, so that you can kind of clean up this particular area. You can use a little bit of brake cleaner if you want to kind of clean the calipers. And then we're going to reinstall the parts next. Alright, so for this next job, what we're going to do is we're going to replace and put each of these parts in. So we're going to line up where these holes are right here, and you know, you see the part right here. We're going to go ahead and place it back and let it snap in here, and then we're going to put in the parts next. Alright, so when we end up lubricating each of these parts, I recommend lubricating around where metal touches metal right here. We're going to take a little bit of silicone inside, the grease that they provide in the container right here. We're going to put some on both sides, and let's make sure we don't get it on the actual brake pad itself. And then we're going to do it for the other part as well, but we are going to install this inside here next, and we're going to let it slip in. And if it doesn't go in completely, you can come in from the side and push it in. So make sure you clean off some of the other brake parts. The thing I wanted to show you with this next upcoming brake part is... Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and open up the brake reservoir. The reason why we do that is when we compress the piston back, the liquid could potentially overfill this depending on how much brake pad you've used. So we're going to go ahead and pull this plastic molding off. Then we're going to go ahead and open up this cap, and we're just going to leave it there. So I would leave it on top of there so that it can't cross-contaminate any items inside. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do is we are going to push in the caliper, and we're going to put in the tool along with a old brake pad. We're going to push in the caliper by continuing to separate and push the old portion in. In case your parts end up coming up with new hardware, we're going to go ahead and clean those metal clips that are inside here. If you have a new set, just go ahead and replace those in. But this is when we completely push in the piston on this car. So we're going to go ahead and install the hardware in next. Okay, so the way that we're going to push this in is this is going to orient from the top. And we're going to go ahead and push it in. And I'd have to say this is probably the worst part of the job, about getting each of these pieces in correctly. So a tip that I would recommend is pushing these in as you push these in. So you're going to be met with a little bit of resistance inside here. And your next step after you've cleaned off any of the grease that may have gotten inside there is you're going to install it in next. I'm going to put a little bit more grease in here just to ensure that the touch points are okay. And then we're going to install it with the brake pad in. And then we're going to take some lubricant. We're going to lubricate each of these pins. This is probably way too much. We're going to lubricate each of these pins. And then we're going to manually install these. Coming up next. You've got to jiggle it around until it catches. I'm going to go ahead and install that. And then if you have a torque wrench, I'll list the torque parameters below there for you. Once you're done, you are going to take your socket. We're going to go the opposite way. You're going to take your socket. Okay, so the last thing we're going to do is we're going to pump the brakes, but before that, just make sure you close out that reservoir like we did a little bit earlier. The reason why we pump the brakes is re-engage the piston. We're going to do that about 5 or 6 times until you see a little bit of resistance on the foot, and you're done.